You are listening to Beyond the Measure, episode 33. Listen as I, a young composer, and my wife, a young choir director, interview other music educators in order to gain insight into their own success in the classroom. We have a lot to learn, and we want you to learn with us. No matter your age, ensemble, or experience, this is the ideal podcast for music educators, composers, and students alike. So join us as we go beyond the measure. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Measure. My name is Christian, and thank you so much for joining us today. If you're brand new to this show, this is a podcast where me and my wife, Kara, we both interview music educators from all across the profession, whether that's, college level, middle school level, choir, band, orchestra, church music, whatever that may be, maybe even on the administration side or composers. We've had just a wide variety of guests so far, and we just interview them to hear their advice for people in the music profession, but primarily in the music education field, and how what they talk about specifically applies to people like you who might teach choir or band or orchestra or any of those things. So if this is your first time, thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate it. This has been a pretty busy season for me and Kara. I'm recording this intro in mid to late November. Thanksgiving is next week, but this interview actually took place all the way back at the beginning of the semester. So it's kind of funny as I was editing this episode, listening to what we were talking about going into the school year. And knowing where we are now, it's crazy how much it has flown by. Kara has been battling sickness. It's that time of year with, you get all the germs from all the students, and I'm actually really busy with a lot of commissions that I'm working on. So it's been pretty hectic lately, but we're looking forward to the break. And it's been nice to have such great interviews that honestly, some details I forgot about over the past couple of months, going back, editing, re-listening to them, and kind of getting mentally rejuvenated in that kind of way from what they had to say with us. So without rambling on, I'll get on to today's guest, who is Mr. Brandon Farren. Now, I'll just jump right into this by reading you his bio, and that is, Brandon Farren is in his 22nd year as the head director at Canyon High School in Canyon, Texas, having taught secondary choral music for 26 years in Texas. Under Brandon's direction, it now features 6 performing ensembles and a music theory program. Brandon directs the Canyon High School Choral, Varsity Women, Varsity Men, and Ovation ensembles, each earning consistent superior and sweepstakes awards at UIL competitions. Under his direction, the choirs performed at the 2007, 2011, and 2020 TMEA conventions. In addition to being active as an adjudicator, Brandon has conducted region clinic and concerts across the state of Texas. He has served as TMEA Region Chair for many years and as the TMEA Area A Vocal Chair. He has also served as TMEA Men's Choir Section Leader at several conventions and is a member of TCDA, MOWT, TMEA, TMEA Mentoring Network, TMAA, and ACDA. That's a lot of letters. He was awarded the Texas State UIL Sponsor Excellence Award in 2011, and he's also been the director of music ministries at Westminster Presbyterian Church for 30 years. This is a really great discussion that Kara and I have with Brandon, and he specifically tells a lot about how to achieve very, very good and very consistent tone. And he talks about it in a choir context, but something that I noticed as he was talking is that a lot of what he talks about is less so much about specific techniques. I mean, he does touch on that, but a lot of it comes down to the habit of working on tone and how consistent you want to work on that. And so that is something that can still be applied not just to choir, but to any ensemble. So I encourage you to listen to this. And even though we talk a lot in the choir context, we want this to be beneficial for people outside of the choir area as well. And so I think a lot of that is still gleaned from this episode. And so I highly encourage you to listen to it. I think it's going to be great. And we do also have show notes linked in the description. So we kind of have an outline of everything that Brandon talks about throughout this episode as well, and you can download that for free. It's just a little Google Docs PDF that you can download. So without further ado, I'll quit yakking here, and we will get on today's episode with Mr. Brandon Farren. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I really enjoy it.
Yes. We're excited to have guests on the show that we don't necessarily know personally, but we have mutual connections with. Honestly, that's pretty much been the case for for every guest we've had on the show that we may not know, but we ask our past guests for recommendations. And so you were actually recommended to us by Reese Kincaid, who we interviewed a good few episodes now at this point. And that was a great discussion we had. And so that's how we got connected to you. You used to work with Reese, right?
Yeah, you guys are, if you get to me, you're dragging the bottom of the barrel. So I don't know if that's good or bad. But yeah, Reese and I worked together for many years here at Canyon High School, and while he was a graduate student at West Texas A&M University. So I know Reese well, and thank you for the invite and the recommendation from Reese, and for you guys for having me. That's awesome.
Of course, of course. Well, before we kind of get more into a specific topic of discussion here, would you mind just kind of telling us a little bit about, and you can go into however much depth you want, but how did you get to where you are now as a music educator? Kind of how did you get going on that path?
Oh man, so typical choir guy out here in West Texas. So I was born and raised in Amarillo and was in choir all the way through middle school, junior high, and high school, and just really fell in love with choral music as a both at church and then through my high school choral program. So Marcus Bradford was at Randall High School, and it was a brand new high school, so it was no traditions. We didn't have to worry about any kind of standards that were set. So it's kind of open ground for us, and so that was kind of a lot of fun. But got to know choral music and fall in love with choral music through high school, and then it's kind of a God thing. Just really realized that that's what I loved and was my calling. I was an athlete all the way through. Was looking at military or some other things, but choral music just really spoke to me, and so I just felt a huge call into that thing. And Robert Shaw's Festival Singers, he had a recording, and forgive me, I don't know if you guys know what this is, but a cassette tape. I asked some kids at school, and they don't even know what that is. But back in the day, listening to the Vespers, the Rachmaninoff Vespers, on a cassette tape, and I was just blown away in high school. For some reason, that made me feel different, and just the things that did to my soul and my heart. I was like, man, that'd be so fun if I could do that for a living. And so then looked at being a music major, auditioned at several schools here in Texas, and settled on West Texas A&M University, and I did my undergraduate there at WT, and then got right to work. My first job was a middle school director in Amarillo at Bowie Middle School for 2 years, and then I was assistant choir director at Tascosa with the incredible Billy Talley for a couple of years, and then I've been at Canyon High School as a head director for 20, I think this is 22 or 3, a lot. Once you get past 20, it's just a lot. So, yeah, and man, I wouldn't change anything. I've loved it. I've got 2 kids that are now music graduates and do music as a profession. So it's been, my wife is my junior high feeder. And so we're like the Von Tratts, but the West Texas version, less German. Von Trapp family, and yeah, it's been incredible, and I've loved this journey and what choral music means to me, and the influence I've had on the choral music here in Texas, and the kids in my community has just been unbelievable. So that's my kind of backstory to my adventures in choral music.
Wow, that's cool. Well, Kara is catching up to you. You're starting year 3 now.
Getting close.
Yeah. Hey, listen, girl. It feels like I just finished 3, and before you know it, it's 23, and you're like, "What happened?" It's crazy.
So you have plenty of experience in the classroom, with choir, and I mean, you've had plenty of time to kind of hone your skills in when it comes to teaching choir and different techniques and things like that. What are some areas that you feel like are very crucial for educators to really be aware of, especially if there's younger people listening to this as they're getting going into the musical classroom world? What do you feel like is some good areas to focus on? Yeah,
and that's a great question. And so much of what we do is varied. So I've also been a music minister at Westminster Presbyterian for 25 years. I've got a professional choir, the High Plains Choral Society, that I think we're on year 3 or 4 now with that choir. And what's amazing is the universality of some of the things that we do that applies to any choir, whether it be lay people at church that don't read real well, at a church choir, as opposed to your all-state seniors, they're 3-year all-staters and they're hungry. But these ideas of what we do can really translate to anybody. High Plains Choral Society, it's almost all professionals, and that's a whole different aspect. And really, my teaching's the same in all 3 of those organizations. But the end product of what you're trying to drive to may be a little different. So you have to have a really big picture of exactly what your end product's going to be. So for school, and whether that's middle school or high school or even elementary, if you're doing some choral work in elementary, it's having this idea, this concept of the end goal. And so many young directors, I think, I was fairly well versed in recordings and some of these other choirs that I've heard, but I never applied that to how can I get a choir at Canaan High School to sound like X, Y, or Z. And so a lot of young directors, they'll just go in there with tone building. So I'm talking about tone work here, and it's a shot in the dark. So whatever sound the choir makes on the very first day, they kind of take that as a baseline, and then they just, I've heard so many, and it just never gets a lot better. Whatever that first couple of weeks is, they might refine some tone and round out some vowels, or the basic choral thing that we all do. But really, that choir from the first 6 weeks to the choir that happens in April and May, the tone is not that different. And I think we can do a lot better job if we allow ourselves to see a big product at the end of it, and always allow ourselves to be working towards that goal on every single rehearsal, as opposed to allowing whatever happens, and I totally get meeting the kids where they are, and I'm a big believer in making that happen. But it's kind of like salvation. We come just as you are, but let's not stay there. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of choirs have a hard time pushing kids past that box. And I know this for a fact, that we underestimate kids all the time and their abilities and what they can and can't do. And I think we put the ceiling on top of high school choirs and junior high choirs, and well, that's really good for a high school choir. Well, that's great, but what if they're able to go past that point? And so I'm all about kicking down some doors and breaking boxes and staying out there. And sometimes to my detriment, which is another thing that we can talk about later, is about going past the point of what we feel comfortable with, tonally, volume-wise, theory-wise, and really getting out into the weeds a little bit. And let's find their true ceiling as a choir, as opposed to this preconceived idea of what a junior high sounds like or a high school sounds like. So tone development for me is about getting an idea of what you want, finding out where they are, and then that becomes your schedule of events throughout the year, is these benchmarks of how to get to this end goal that you heard in your head. And if there's no idea, and for young choir directors, year 1, 2, it's hard because you don't know really the potential of a young, because you're just, and you know this, years 1, 2, and 3, oh, please, dear Lord, let me survive today. And I was there. I think any young director's been there, and that's fine, and that can be fun. But eventually you get past that point and you need to start really digging into what can we do as a choir, and not can we be as good as we were the year before, or can we be as good as the great high school choir that we heard at contest or festival last year, but can we push it way past that point? Just shoot for the sky and let's see what happens. And in order to do that, you've got to have an idea of what you want from the get-go. And so you're refining tone every single day towards that goal, as opposed to kind of wandering back and forth and having good and bad and peaks and valleys, which we all have, but not tonally. I think tonally we can keep a pretty straight path because that's very controllable. Readability, rep, things like that, that's going to be up and down. But tonally, that's something that we can control in our vocalises every day, in our warm-ups every single day. You can control tone. And if we're not doing that and it's just up and down because it's a Monday, it's a pep rally, it's a whatever, well, I think we're allowing worldly things to keep us from achieving something that is beyond our understanding, a lot more internal. And I've talked a whole lot. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's great. I actually do have a question though. You mentioned like hearing your choir at like the first, the first 6 weeks, and they don't sound very different. So I heard my sixth grade girls choir sing for the first time on Friday, and I mean, they have great voices, that they're nice and confident, but they're sound like little kids. And so what are some like things that you do to introduce like the tone refinement and everything to them?
Great question. So how exposed have these kids been to incredible singing, whether that be solo work or choral work, right? So maybe one of the first steps we have is expanding their palette, their ears into something that's maybe they've never heard. So maybe there's a great choir at church that they can kind of model themselves after. And I like to work from small to big. So if we can find something local that it makes a great impact on them, then let's use that. You guys are down in Abilene, right? And Jeff Goolsby and I are good friends. He runs a great program. Can we get those sixth graders to go sit in on a little concert there and hear what big singing sounds like? Some of these high schools, just getting them exposed to something bigger than, and I'm so old now, I can't even use pop references because then the kids are like, that's so 2050, I'm so old. Yeah. And I told the kids just the other day, I told them, I said, man, your music is just so lacking on the radio. It's very formulaic, and they didn't take offense to it. They agreed with me, actually. I mean, I'm talking about a choir of 80 kids were like, yeah, our music's not very good. And they kind of know it. So can we get them exposed to some incredible choirs? And of course, bringing in recordings into class and listening to something. Are they going to be able to sing, some all-state recording? No. But what if those sopranos, those young little sopranos that have already changed, and boys, unfortunately, we're talking about sixth grade boys, it's hit and miss. You've got 3 guys that are singing bass and 47 of them that are unchanged tenors. Well, that's a whole different ball game, because you're like, listen to those incredible tenors. They're like, I can't sing that low. I mean, it's just different. But can we expose them to something incredible and we're going to go cheesy with it. Just find some incredible piece of choral music that's going to speak to them a little bit. And for me, it expands their palette, and gets them out of the box a little bit. And once they hear that, they want to know, how did they do that? Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about space and production and air support and all the choir nerd things. So we can do that, but until they wonder why, it's really hard to talk a kid into something until they wonder, well, what is that? Well, good question. Let me show you. As opposed to, hey, listen, get off your phones, and now we're forcing them into this little paradigm, as opposed to allowing them to ask the questions and then showing them how to get to where they want to be instead of where we want to be.
Okay, would you like a way to create a special moment, a unique memory that only you and your students can share? Is there a certain audience you will be performing for and you want just the right type of music for the occasion? Or perhaps you're just in need of a piece that has a specific voicing, range, or theme that you haven't been able to find anywhere else. I mean, last time I checked, publishers weren't scrambling to create music for a bassoon, alto voice, and accordion trio, but maybe that's what you're looking for. No matter the reason or the instrumentation, I would love to fulfill your music needs in the form of a commission. If you're unfamiliar with what commissioning me would look like, or even any composer for that matter, you can learn more about the process at christianfortnermusic.com/commission. This includes info such as the step-by-step timeline, payment options, and more. I want to work with you so that we can create a memorable experience for everyone involved, including you, myself, the performers, and the listeners that will hear the music for years to come. Because remember, you never know whose lives will be changed for the better because of the music that came into existence because of you. So are you ready to make a new memory through new music? I am. Take the first step by filling out a commission request form at christianfortnermusic.com/commission. Hope to hear from you soon. To me, it sounds like from what you're saying is, I think there's kind of a cool dynamic there between the perspective of the students and the perspective of you as the director. As the director, you need to have a vision of, okay, well, where do I want them to go from here? But in this sort of instance, when it comes to the students, you just need to show them where they can go because they need to be able to see what's possible.
Yes, we've gotten into this horrible habit as a society in America right now of letting children decide right and wrong and their direction. I don't want to go into too much. I don't want to get off the weeds because, but man, I look back at myself as a 12-year-old kid. I wouldn't have any idea about so many things. So why not have someone who is the expert in the room, which is why we are getting paid to do what we do, and go and show them some options. And that's exactly right, Christian. We've got to expand our young people's minds in a good and positive and productive vision, as opposed to, y'all just do your best and we're going to make this work and I'm okay. Well, their best and your best are two different things, and which one of us is the expert? So expand them. It's okay. We're not hurting them by doing that. We're allowing them to be bigger than they are. And I think everybody agrees on that. We just don't agree on how to get that done.
Yeah, yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, this is applicable more than just to choirs, right? I mean, this goes for, any kind of ensemble.
100%. I think any of us that have watched an incredible athlete, an incredible musician, just anything that requires talent to be well, you're in awe of their ability, and those are the things that lead us to want to get better. I just can't imagine just someone getting up out of bed, never have seen anything great, and been like, today's the day I break the world record, without ever having seen anybody else do it. I mean, that's a strange concept to me.
Yeah, yeah. So when it comes to working, taking the steps towards improving, going back to the tone thing, for example, although this could go for, any sort of, aspect of the music. But, when it comes to something like tone, and you're slowly taking steps throughout the year to see that improvement, what kind of steps do you take to kind of go through that process?
Yeah, that's great. So anybody who tries to teach tonal development through rep is really putting themselves at a disadvantage, because you think about ourselves, sometimes as musicians, after we have all this training, we go back and we try to make the kids work on the same pace that we do. It's impossible. We read better than they do. We read faster than they do. We're taking in a lot of information and synthesizing that a lot faster than they're able to do it. So if you're working on some German piece in choir, and so those kids are trying to think about how to say the German, what rhythms are singing, what is the interval between the first note and the second note and the third note and the fourth note, and at the same time you're going to teach them how to make a round sound. You're crazy. If you think that's going to be productive, you are fooling yourself. So these vocalises to me are huge. I'm in the fourth day of school. I think tomorrow we start our fifth. We still haven't sung. I don't have a single piece of music in front of them right now, because my first 4 days are entirely about going back and learning the basics of sight reading and learning the basics of tone production. So we'll spend 20 minutes on vocalises at the beginning, and this is one of my hang-ups, and a lot of my colleagues will, I'm not trying to insult anybody or get in an argument, but warm-ups are a waste of time, and calling them warm-ups is a waste of time. All of my choirs in the afternoon are 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. We have one little choir that's in the early morning. These kids have been talking for 5 hours. They've eaten lunch. Taco Bell has already burned their vocal systems. They're alive. We don't need to warm up. Within the first 5 minutes of singing, they're warm. You know what I mean? So the whole idea of calling them this warm-ups, well, in the kids' minds, it becomes like stretches. They're warming up. That's not what we're doing, folks. The first 15 minutes of class should be vocal exercises that are getting them better at tone. They're getting them better at production. That are getting them better about breathing. And so we call them vocalises at Canaan, because I want them really focused on what is the purpose of this exercise. And so these first 4 days we talk about, all right, what is this exercise? Why do we do this particular vocalise? And we talk about it a little bit, and then the kids realize, oh, it's about eliminating subglottal pressure. And of course, they don't use all these terms, but in their terms, they'll talk about it. And then they'll figure out, okay, so like when I sing a zia, zia, so it's taking out all the glottal pressure and it's creating freedom of tone. Absolutely. So good. Now, every time that we sing that from now until May, they know why we're doing it. And if we can teach kids to do things for why instead of what and how and when, oh my gosh, we've already taken care of half our problems, right? Because the kids check out. So if they know why they're doing it, I don't have to talk about it anymore. So it becomes a little voice lesson. For 15 minutes, we have group voice lessons at the beginning of class, and then we get into everything else that happens. And all of a sudden, these kids start to make this incredible tone because they have voice lessons every single day, 5 days a week for an entire year. Holy cow. Now you've got some professional musicians at the end of it instead of kids that are singing in choir, which is totally different. So tone development for me has to happen in your vocal exercises before class. And so many people will just treat it as like, almost like, what do they call it in the class? Bell work. You know what I mean? This is what we do to get ourselves ready for class. No. This is what we do to make better vocalists. This is how we prepare our voices to do incredible things. And if you do that 15 minutes a day, holy cow, by May and April, you've got a room full of 70 vocalists like you did in college. And you remember, guys, what your college choir sounded like, because it was about a bunch of people studying voice, and all of a sudden this tone. Well, can we not do the same thing in junior high and high school and even at or intermediate and even some of the elementaries? We can train these kids to be more conscious of what's happened vocally, as opposed to, let's warm up, okay, routine, same 5 exercises every day. Okay, great. Now we're going to sight read the same thing that we did for the past 5 days. Okay, good. Now let's get our, well, you're just setting yourself up for, if you have a mundane session, you're going to have mundane singing. And I think we need to break ourselves out of that mold.
Wow. Oh man, this is very interesting because that's a take that we have not heard very often, but that's what I like about it, right? That's what's good.
I'm out of the box, Christian. I'm crazy. You guys are going to have to burn this one.
Going off of that, I did want to ask, and you kind of briefly mentioned it, is I was wondering, is there a difference does it make a difference depending on, what age level you're teaching? Do you think it really matters? Does one age level need more of that than the other?
So that's where our expertise comes into play. So in high school, I can push these kids a lot more towards the same thing that those of us who study music in college have seen, because they're not that different. I mean, you look at a high school senior and a college freshman, they're the same. And now we start getting into freshmen, boys especially, junior high boys. Now that's a whole nother ball of wax. So obviously the ranges are shortened, and it changes from day to day. They have this 5-note range that shifts. And so we've got to find out, okay, it's Tuesday. Where are these guys at today, right? So that has to change a little bit. But there are some vocal exercises that are applicable to any age group, as long as you find the place that fits their voice. Expanding the head voice of the ladies can happen anywhere, 6th through 12, 6th grade through 12th grade, because by that point, the range has been established. Now, you can't expect the 6th graders to make the same tonal things that the seniors are doing, obviously, but we can start to expand that range out and get them comfortable in making these pitches that are happening above the thing, that are unpressed and relaxed and shimmer and spin and all the things. Guys, something's wrong with us. We're slow learners, A of all, and that continues all into adulthood. I am also still a very slow learner. But that voice change thing is hard in junior high. So you've got to find that 5-note range that's shifting from day to day. But those vocal exercises can be used. We just got to go to where they're at, as opposed to trying to make them fit into something else like we do in high school. There's a junior high, and you guys need to interview Heather, my wife Heather. A of all, everything that I say today will pale in comparison to the incredible work she does. And if you ask anybody who has ever worked or seen her work, it's unbelievable. For the junior high voice, it's just, she's brilliant. But tailor making those exercises to where they are. We just did all the voicing for her choir. So the first couple of days, we all go down there and we just pull them out one at a time, and we take turns taking these kids out, and we voice them to make sure, some kid over the summer, you guys have seen this because you teach junior high, he was your best soprano first tenor, unchanged tenor last year, and he comes in over the summer and he's like, I think something's wrong. And you're like, oh, okay, there's nothing wrong, but you're no longer right. So, like the warm-ups, and I was showing them the exercises I was going to do for my voicings, so that I didn't have to say it, 180 times with each kid. So I was going through it. And of course I tried to start in the middle. Well, that was a horrible idea because now those basses can't sing up there. The tenors can't sing down there. So I'm just in no man's land in the middle. And I was like, okay, all you guys who think your bass is this one time, and we played it down there, and then I jumped the full octave up. I was like, all right, tenors, you just have to, it's different for junior high because you've got to find those boys where they're at. But those vocal exercises still work. You just have to find their range to make those things work. Because subglottal pressure, freedom of singing, a balanced onset, all these vocal technique things, they're very applicable to junior high kids. You just have to find it in different spaces, I guess I'm saying. But I'm not a junior high expert. You talk to Heather. You need to have Heather on. She'll tell you all about it.
This is kind of weird. Did she judge the Region 6 UIL?
She did.
Okay, so
yeah, I think she's one of you guys' judges.
I think it might have been sight reading. I can't really remember, but
I can't remember.
Yeah, okay, because that name sounded familiar. So
she's the really pretty one. I'm the big burly bear that they bring in to yell at. I'm the heavy of the group.
What would you say, if let's say, someone's listening to this, it is the middle of the school year, let's say October, November, or even, January, February, and they're not feeling like they're not seeing or hearing that growth in the tone, like what you were talking about. What do you find is usually maybe the issue if you're not quite hearing that progress?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and I'm a big believer in comparison being the thief of joy. I don't know if you guys have heard that term before, because sometimes in high school we've created this, and junior high too, we've created this idea of music being a competition centered idea. Right, and so we have to go win a trophy, or we have to go do well at Allstate, or whatever the competition happens to be. And it makes me laugh because I am an uber competitive guy. But over the years, I've realized God didn't create music so that we could go and win a $5 trophy. Right, I could go buy that. I could go buy that for cheap. And a lot cheaper than it took us to win it. Is it a great benchmark and a way to, yes, and there are some great things about the competition, but that being said, there is a thing about comparison. So taking a recording, so same scenario, you're at Christmas and you just had your Christmas concert, and we're just not making the progression that we think we need to. So maybe I find that exact piece done by an incredible choir that is online, a St. Olaf, a Concordia, Voces. I could go on and on about some incredible choral ensembles, and we prepare. And not that those kids need to sound like St. Olaf. If it's a freshman choir, they're not going to sound like it. But we can listen to the two and say, what's different about these two recordings? Y'all, I'm proud of you guys. It was a really nice performance. I couldn't ask more of you. But I'm fixing to ask more of you. And so we compare those two things together, and then you say, what's different about it? Well, the kids are going to do it for you. You're not even going to have to. They're going to be like, oh, those sopranos were so X. And the balance, they're going to hear a lot more than you think they are because they're incredibly intelligent. Kids are so much more intelligent than we give them credit for. And so you say, okay, great. You're exactly right. So what can we do to help shape ourselves towards that sound, or and allow the kids to have ownership in the sound, because it was their idea and it was their observation that something was different between those two recordings. And if you don't have two recordings of that same piece against each other, you can listen to it and do an analysis at home. I think everybody's done that. But then we start to get into we did this wrong, and we need to find the things that we did really well too, so that there's a balance of great positive energy that's building us up, in addition to what we're going to work on. So there is no negative connotation. It's always things that are going to make us better. And speaking in terms of that, I think helps quite a bit, as opposed to, well, we were horrible at this and we sucked at this, and because then it's a beat down, as opposed to, what we could do? We could do this, and we could do this, and that that leads to a much more positive conversation and a much more positive outlook and direction, as opposed to, wow, we really we did a horrible job there. And sometimes it's true, but we have to find a way to say, okay, yeah, y'all, we had a lot better rehearsals than we did a performance. Okay, so what can we do better? And then and that's the whole leadership idea of building young leaders into seeing the future as opposed to right and wrong. It's a whole different concept.
Well, it's ironic when you say that. What it is tone, but not musical tone in this case, right?
Yeah. No, 100%. It's leadership tone, and there is such a thing. 100%.
Yeah. All how you outline that, because I was thinking as you were saying that, I bet there are some people out there that might be hesitant to do that kind of practice in comparison, because like you said, comparison can be can be hard in certain ways. But I think that just puts more responsibility on you as the director to really, you need to be the one to lead the mindset, right? You're the mindset leader of how we're not going to view this as, oh, look at how horrible we did compared to these people, but use that as motivation to keep working for what we can become.
That's brilliant. And can we teach our leaders, our section leaders, our officers, and our leadership council, or whatever you have at your choir, can we teach them to do the same thing that you're wanting to do? And if you're not demonstrating that every single day, then you're not giving them the example that they need to grow off of. I tell student teachers and anybody who works, any assistants that I've worked with, this whole idea, and young teachers are really bad at this usually. Here I am saying bad things that I said not to do, but this is something that young teachers can grow on, right? Is quit using the terms of me and you, this idea of, well, this is what I need, and this is what you guys are doing, and these two things aren't. Well, now we've created this dichotomy of forces against each other. So we have these two different layers that are always pressing against each other, as opposed to saying a lot of we and us, and all of a sudden. So when you ask the kids, hey y'all, what can we do better today? And if you start speaking in we on August 15th, by December 15th, the kids are speaking in we, and it's us, and it's not me and you, and this separation, this to speak of the Reformation, I will say it and you will do it. Well, we're all one body, so let's figure out how we can accomplish this together, because I'm here to serve. I am not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to show you what to do, and together we're going to walk through this door together. And I think you said it well, Christian. It's the tone of leadership is just as important as sometimes the choir tone, because you can show them incredible singers and have all these incredible ideas, but if the kids feel like it's a fight between you and them, there's just some kind of conflict, then good luck. That's a long year. I don't want to be in that year. I've done that year. I don't want to go back to that year ever again. Which,
by the way, going off of that, it's not it's not off subject, because it still goes back to setting the tone as a leader. That really made me think about some of my well, I won't say some, all of my choir directors. I think I can safely say that I've been blessed to have choir directors my whole life that did this very well. But especially my high school choir directors I'm specifically thinking about at UIL. And, as a student, especially here in Texas and in choir, and like you said, the competition aspect is very, very much out there. And you're working up to UIL, everyone's, we're stressing about the music and doing everything as good as we can. The performance comes and we do our best. And if I remember correctly, I feel like most of the time we would walk off that stage. And for me personally, I thought, well, I feel like we did good. I don't know. Did we do as good as we could have? Right. And you're worried. It's like, oh, are we going to get this, sweepstakes or whatever? And the tension's kind of high. And we were walking off the stage, and my choir director is standing there with the biggest smile on her face, giving us a thumbs up and mouthing, "Y'all did so good. That was incredible." And it's like, no matter what we felt, right? And I feel like even as a student, I was like, I'm sure they heard things that could have been better, and yet they have made a point to from the very beginning to reaffirm to us, y'all did so good, y'all did a great job. I am so proud of you, and it makes you feel, it just takes a weight off, once you get there.
Yeah, because you have to allow kids to achieve their peak, right? And so this vision inside of your head of what we should sound like at the very end of it, what if they don't get there? Well, okay, so maybe that for you, maybe you shot too high. Did that choir, and you bring up a good point, achieve the best performance they could do on that stage at the time? If they did, you can't ask for anything else. You can't ask for anything else. They had literally achieved all that they could do at that point. You better build them up like it's the greatest performance since the history of man.
Yeah.
On the sixth day, God created music, and you guys achieved this. I mean, it has to be something huge. On the sixth day, God did not create music and say, "Go forth and smash all other choirs in your way." That's not what, that was not His intent for music. It's an expression of who we are, and it's an expression of our soul in worship, and it's an expression of healing, and it's how these kids, this sanctuary that we build every single day in class, that's where they get away from all the stuff of high school, and they come for 45 minutes, an hour, whatever they have with you, and just get away from it all. And we have to lean into that at some time, and it has to quit being about other people's perception of your work, and it has to start becoming, did we live up to our potential? Years ago, I gave up on the whole concept of three judges at UIL evaluating my worth as a human being. More importantly, my choir's worth as a choir is it can't be determined by three people on a 15-minute concert at UIL. Now, do I like contests? 100%. I think it's a really smart thing, and I judge all over the state all the time, and I pray that people don't walk away saying, "Well, that guy," I'm trying to give them things that I think will help them get to whatever point they could be. But I don't know that choir. Maybe that was the best they've ever done since the beginning of school. I don't know that as a judge, so I think anybody who goes to UIL needs to be very conscious that they're hearing a 15-minute performance, and we're saying this was really good, and this could be better, and we're not making a judgment call on your teaching, on the kids' souls. We're not condemning them to heaven or hell in those 15 minutes. Some people take it that seriously. They're like, well, we got a 2. Well, 2 is excellent. It literally, that's the score. 2 is excellent.
Yeah.
Were your kids excellent that day? So it's a good point. And for you for your director to come, where did you go to high school, Christian?
I went to Rouse High School in Leander in the Austin area.
Who was your choir director?
Brenda Justice and Julie Rhodes.
I don't know them, unfortunately. I was going to say I know so many of them, but I think that's brilliant to go, y'all. That was great, because how much work did you guys do to get to that point, and to go, your work was worthwhile.
Yeah.
And here you guys are all these years later. Music is a huge part of your life every single day, and it's probably because of something like that. And whenever we allow a 2 or even worse 3, 4, whatever to determine our self-worth, we've given too much power to a single day. That's insanity. Nowhere else does that happen. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of rewarding kids. Now, the other side of that coin is saying good job whenever it's not.
Sure.
Now, is that at contests? Not necessarily, because those kids gave it all. But so many student teachers, I often have to do this with student teachers. They'll be in there and they'll be singing, and they're fumbling through vocalises, or we give them a piece and they, it's mediocre to bad. And at the end of it, they go, "Good job, guys," and the kids leave. And I'm like, what? Why did you say good job?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, and I'm like, no, I get it. And I understand where you're coming from. And I was young too, but you need to give them, if they think that's a good job, that's all you're ever going to get. You've got to make something bigger at the end of the day, especially in rehearsal. You need to make them earn a good job. And all of a sudden, because kids want to get that, they want to earn that. And if you just are handing out good jobs like Tootsie Rolls, we're in trouble. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, when we live in a world nowadays where it's almost like an insult to have a high bar, and so it's important to keep that.
Oh my gosh. And that's what I found with kids. Everybody's like, well, you can't be too hard on them. It's not true. I have found, and you guys in the classroom have seen this, the more that you hold a high bar and expect it of them, they appreciate that because all of a sudden they're worth it. And I tell my choirs this all the time. Do you know why I push you guys so hard? Because you're worth it. And all of a sudden you're tying in this ability because to their worth, and they want to do well instead of, hey, just, COVID, just get it done, turn it in. I'm not going to grade it. So we've got to give them some kind of standards that they can meet in the schools, at homes, in our churches. We've got to do a better job of giving them goals that they can achieve, really high ones that take some work to do also, and hold them accountable. And they love it. They appreciate it. They really do.
Oh, no, that's great.
But that's just me.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's awesome. Well, I think that's a great spot to wrap it up. I mean, you provide us with so many great thoughts. Again, I think that's applicable not just to choir, but to any ensemble, not even just music, right? I mean, just teaching and teamwork and leadership. And that's what's most important for it to be applicable like that.
Yeah, and that whole vertical idea. So being a part of a team, a high school, junior high, middle school, whatever, even elementary, if they have an idea of what the tonal idea is for the whole team, the starting idea of all that, all of a sudden you guys have a common goal. This is good for leadership in choir. It's good for leadership within vertical teams of teachers. Holy cow, you can really change the whole atmosphere of a school when you see that thing. And it's so important. Yeah, I think it's really important.
Okay, well, Brandon, before we go, for anyone listening that might want to, connect with you or your choir, how can they reach y'all?
Well, I'm at Canyon High School, and anytime any teachers have any ideas, I do quite a bit of work with young teachers. Please let me know how I can help and mentor you guys. The High Plains Choral Society here, if you're in the Panhandle and you're looking for an incredible concert, they've got a lot of we've got some incredible performances this year and incredible pieces of music, and we'd love to see anybody. And you can find us on Facebook and online at High Plains Choral Society, Canyon High School. And if you're looking for a church in Amarillo, Westminster Presbyterian, so you throw a rock and you can hit Brandon Farren anywhere up here in Amarillo and Canyon. So
very good, perfect. And we'll have any websites and social media for all that stuff. We'll have that linked in the description, and we will have show notes as well, going over all the stuff we talked about today. But yeah, Brandon, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. It was great. It was awesome.
Yeah, no, it was my pleasure, man. Thank you for inviting me. It was really fun.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Beyond the Measure, a podcast for music educators. We hope you learned something that will help you stress less about how to teach so that you can focus more on who you're teaching. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a rating and review, subscribe, and share this podcast with other music educators. See you in the next one.